Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another TechCravers video. One of the absolute most common questions I've been getting over the past few days is, are you going to try your MIG Switch flashcard on your new Nintendo Switch 2? And well, today's the day. We're going to find out if it works and if it's safe. For those unfamiliar, the MIG Switch is a unique device that allows you to use a micro SD card as a physical game cartridge on your Nintendo Switch. It's not an emulator, instead you use a separate device called the MIG dumper to copy the contents of your original Switch cartridge onto a micro SD card. That card is then inserted into the MIG Switch, which tricks the console into reading it just like a regular game card. It's marketed as a way to manage your own game library and backups more easily, but as you can imagine, it definitely sits in a bit of a gray zone. So today I'll be testing it on the Nintendo Switch 2 to see what happens, so you don't have to. Will it boot? Will it crash? Or worse, will it brick my console? Let's find out. And before we begin testing, I just want to clarify that I'll be using the MIG Switch version 2 for this video. This is the version with a small button on top that lets you cycle between games directly. No need to physically eject or reinsert the game card every time. I've also updated my MIG Switch to firmware version 1.1.9, which at the time of recording is the latest available version. Now, before we test it in the Nintendo Switch 2, let's try it in my old Nintendo Switch OLED. And as you can see, Tears of the Kingdom shows up immediately. And when I press the small button on top of the cartridge, the MIG Switch starts cycling through all the games I've previously dumped and loaded onto the micro SD card. And if I go ahead and launch Tears of the Kingdom, my Switch OLED shouldn't have any issues running it. After all, it's a 1x1 clone of my original game cartridge. That said, I'll be censoring any potential gameplay footage here just to be on the safe side. You know how sensitive certain people can be when it comes to this kind of content. Now let's do a quick game swap to make sure everything is working as intended. And yes, I'm using my little prior tool to press the button because honestly it's really small and kind of fiddly to press with just your fingers. And just like that, Pokemon Shining Pearl also boots up as well, exactly as if I had the original cartridge inserted into my Switch OLED. But now let's test what you all came for. What happens when I insert the MIG Switch version 2 into my brand new Nintendo Switch 2? Well, it seems to cycle through the games just like it did on my Switch OLED, which suggests that the Switch 2 and the original Switch at least read game titles in the same way. But of course, the real question is whether the games will actually launch, so let's start with Pokemon Shining Pearl. It's asking for an update, but let's go ahead and try to launch it as is. And it's a no-go, could not read the software. Alright, let's give Tears of the Kingdom a shot instead. I've actually bought the Switch 2 Edition upgrade from the eShop, so maybe that will trick the console into thinking the game is legit and properly inserted. Let's see what happens. But nope, same error here. Disappointing, but honestly not all that surprising. There's one last thing I want to try before giving up though. What happens if I go ahead and download the update that my Switch 2 wanted when I tried launching something like Pokemon Shining Pearl from my MIG Switch? So I'm just gonna leave it here and let the update finish, and then we'll see what happens. Alright, the update has finished downloading, let's go ahead and try launching the game one last time. Fingers crossed. Nope, still not working. So yeah, the rumors about Switch 2 getting bricked by using a MIG Switch card, we can safely debunk those. Nothing happened to the console, but unfortunately the card itself doesn't work in its current form. It's pretty clear that Nintendo has taken steps to detect and block these kinds of devices on the Switch 2. Most likely they've reverse engineered the MIG Switch and put protections in place. Could we see something similar made specifically for the Switch 2 in the future? Well, maybe, and if that happens, you bet I'll cover it here on TechCravers. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, leave a like and drop a comment down below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.